Lex Luthor may be Superman's greatest enemy, but in Smallville, the true villain wasn't the son, it was the father. With nothing but money, charm, and ruthless intelligence, Lionel Luthor shaped both Clark and Lex in ways that changed the entire series. Today, we're breaking down why Lionel was the real mastermind and the shadow that doomed Clark Kent's world. Lionel Luthor's greatest weapon wasn't his money, his connections, or even his schemes. It was his mask. On the surface, Lionel projected the image of a respectable billionaire, a polished man of influence with refined tastes and sharp wit. He wasn't a thug or an obvious tyrant. He wore power like a tailored suit, charming everyone from business leaders to politicians. In public, he was the picture of legitimacy. But behind that mask lived something far darker. Unlike meteor freaks or alien invaders, Lionel didn't need powers to dominate. His true strength lay in manipulation. He controlled boardrooms, bent laws, and turned people into pawns without ever lifting a finger. And because he cloaked his cruelty and charm, his enemies often underestimated him until it was too late. And no one felt that mask's sting more than his own son Lex. From Lex's earliest years, Lionel treated affection like a weapon. Approval wasn't given, it was dangled, always just out of reach. Whenever Lex succeeded, Lionel minimized it. Whenever Lex failed, Lionel punished him. This constant cycle of conditional love left Lex starving for validation, desperate to prove himself worthy in his father's eyes. That desperation became the engine of Lex's ambition, driving him further into darkness. Lionel's cruelty wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came in the form of subtle digs, undermining comments, or manipulative lessons framed as fatherly wisdom. He taught Lex to trust no one, to see kindness as weakness, and to believe that power was the only currency that mattered. Every time Lex tried to escape his father's shadow, Lionel pulled him back, reminding him that he would never be enough. One of Lionel's most sinister tactics was gaslighting. He would twist events, lie outright, and warp reality so that Lex questioned his own judgment. By controlling his son's perception of truth, Lionel made sure Lex never trusted his own instincts. Instead, Lex learned to rely on manipulation and control, mirroring the very tactics his father used against him. And yet, perhaps the cruelest part of Lionel's manipulation was the paradox it created. Deep down, Lex both hated and admired his father. He despised Lionel's cruelty, but he couldn't deny his effectiveness. Every ruthless lesson stuck. Every insult hardened Lex's resolve. Slowly but surely, Lex began to resemble the very man he swore he wouldn't become.
How dare you play God with my life?
But Lionel didn't just destroy Lex. He also waged war on Clark Kent. From the moment Lionel began suspecting there was more to Clark than met the eye, he set out to pry into his life with the same surgical precision he used to dismantle business rivals. He questioned Clark's loyalty, tested his values, and prodded at his weaknesses. Unlike Lex, who longed for Clark's friendship before descending into obsession, Lionel never saw Clark as a friend. To Lionel, Clark was a tool, something powerful that could be bent to his will. This dynamic made Lionel particularly dangerous. Because Clark was still a teenager grappling with his identity and his powers, Lionel's intellect and manipulation loomed like a predator circling prey. He didn't just threaten Clark physically, he cornered him psychologically. Lionel used fear and intimidation, often hinting at knowledge he wasn't supposed to have. He pressured Clark into making choices that revealed more of his true nature, forcing him into positions where his morality was constantly tested. The truly chilling part is that Lionel didn't need to discover Clark's secret to manipulate him effectively. Even without knowing Clark's Kryptonian heritage at first, Lionel recognized something extraordinary in him, and that was enough. He applied the same tactics he used on Lex: gaslighting, intimidation, and an uncanny ability to frame himself as the only one who truly understood what greatness required. If Lionel had been Clark's father instead of Jonathan Kent,
I am your father, and I alone raised you in my own image to become the man that you are today.
what kind of Superman would we have gotten? At the core of Lionel's worldview was the belief in survival of the fittest. In business, in politics, in personal relationships, Lionel believed the strong thrived and the weak were crushed. Every deal he made, every manipulation he orchestrated, stemmed from this conviction. To him, control wasn't just desirable, it was natural law. If you weren't controlling, you were being controlled. And Lionel had no intention of ever being on the losing end. This philosophy wasn't something Lionel kept to himself. He drilled it into Lex from childhood. Where Jonathan Kent raised Clark with humility and honesty, Lionel raised Lex with suspicion and fear. He'd say things like, "Trust no one," or "Love is a vulnerability." For Lionel, power was the only real currency, and he treated relationships as transactions. If someone had no value to him, they were disposable. If they did, they were still just pawns on a larger chessboard. The irony is that Lionel often cloaked his ruthless philosophy in eloquence. He quoted philosophers, spoke of destiny, and carried himself like a visionary. This gave his cruelty a veneer of legitimacy, making his lessons sound like wisdom rather than abuse. For Lex, who desperately sought guidance from his father, these teachings became gospel, even when they tore him apart. Another striking element of Lionel's philosophy was his belief in destiny. Unlike Lex, who wrestled with whether his life was shaped by fate or choice, Lionel embraced destiny when it suited him and bent it when it didn't. He viewed Clark's arrival as an opportunity, Lex's future as inevitable, and his own role as the architect of it all. To Lionel, free will was an illusion. There were only those strong enough to shape the future and those too weak to stop it. That philosophy is why Lionel was so dangerous. He wasn't chaotic, he wasn't reckless, he was disciplined, patient, and utterly convinced that his worldview was correct. And worst of all, he passed it down, ensuring that his legacy would haunt Smallville long after he was gone. Lionel's legacy didn't end with his schemes. His obsession with power and Krypton created ripple effects through the entire series. From Veritas to the Fortress Key, Lionel was always one step ahead. Lionel's most obvious legacy was Lex. By the time Lex fully embraced his role as Clark's ultimate adversary, you could see Lionel's fingerprints all over him. Even in death, Lionel's shadow haunted both Lex and Clark. Because Lionel wasn't just a villain, he was the catalyst that pushed Lex over the edge and forced Clark to rise stronger. When fans think of Smallville's greatest villains, names like Lex Luthor, Brainiac, Zod, or even Darkseid often come to mind. They had powers, armies, or cosmic scale. But the truth is, none of them defined Clark Kent's journey or Lex's downfall the way Lionel Luthor did. Lionel wasn't a monster from another planet or a freak accident of kryptonite. He was human, and that's what made him terrifying. His evil didn't come from powers. It came from choice. And those choices shaped everyone around him. Without Lionel, there may never have been a Lex Luthor. And without Lionel, Clark's journey would have been far less dangerous. That's why Lionel Luthor, cold, manipulative, unstoppable, was Smallville's true villain. Do you agree that Lionel was the real villain of Smallville? Or was he just another stepping stone to Lex's destiny? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more Smallville deep dives. Thanks for watching.